Comic book characters at Marvel have been doing very well at the movie theater in recent years. You've got Avengers, who are now a household name, X-Men, who kickstarted comic book movies into overdrive, and Fantastic Four, who, well, yeah, they aren't doing so hot. Regardless, it's a great time to be a fan of superheroes. But a superhero is only as good as their villain, or something like that. And with the massive amount of heroes we have lined up in the varying Marvel universes, great villains are sadly few and far between. That's why we've compiled a humble list of 5 supervillains you should really know about, because they're not only potentially coming down the pipeline, but they're just really, really cool. Let's get started. We shall begin our list with a symbiote, you know, from the Spider-Man series, like Venom, but today we are focusing on Carnage. A little backstory on Venom, Carnage, and symbiotes. First, symbiotes are alien life forms that bond with hosts and feed off their adrenaline, but provide a ton of powers such as a healing factor, enhanced intelligence, super strength and speed, incredible amounts of endurance, etc. After the events of Secret Wars, Spider-Man inadvertently brought the Venom symbiote back to Earth, where it would inevitably bond to Eddie Brock, creating Venom. Cletus Cassidy, a crazed serial killer, would also befall the same fate as Brock by merging with Venom's offspring. Starting to see a trend? Both Venom and Carnage would be formidable and deadly adversaries that Spider-Man had to face. Not only that, but they seem to keep popping up all over the place. This is because symbiotes reproduce asexually, so when a new one must be born, a new host must be found. Carnage's child Toxin is a prime example of this, but because Toxin is more of a hero, we'll perhaps get to him in another episode. But let's get to his feat/powers. Carnage can do all the things I mentioned earlier, along with sticking to walls, using tendrils like Venom to swing from place to place, and turning those tendrils into weapons like axes, for example. As for feats, Carnage has been able to hold his own against Venom and Spider-Man simultaneously, bond with the Avengers and use them like puppets, and it survives in outer space for an entire year after being ripped apart by Sentry. That's pretty sweet. Here's hoping we get to see a live adaptation of this crazed killer in the future. The next villain on our list happens to be one of the most powerful, and Doctor Strange's toughest foe, Dormammu. A trans-dimensional being known as a Faltine, Dormammu journeyed to the Dark Dimension and ended up becoming the ruler of the entire realm, and reigned as the one true Lord. Now, the thing about Dormammu that is so fascinating isn't that he's a complex or relatable villain in any way, but simply the opposite. He's considered one of the Marvel Universe's most powerful mystical entities. His powers include, but are definitely not limited to, matter manipulation, energy projection, teleportation, making demon lords, elemental control, and necromancy, to name a few. Not only are his powers really cool, but he's just a very interesting character to look at as far as aesthetics are concerned. Just look at this guy. He's like Ghost Rider meets Doctor Doom. To see him in a live-action movie would truly be a feast for the eyes. Amongst his many feats are the fact that he extinguished Ghost Rider's flames, sealed the powerful artifact known as the Eye of Agamotto, and is responsible for sustaining an entire dimension just by existing. Also, even though it ends in a draw, he does play Odin himself in a game of chess, which is pretty great in and of itself. All in all, Dormammu is a massively powerful being that would be pretty great to see on the silver screen. The next villain on our list gets a little bit more complicated, but try to stay with me here. Before he was Kang the Conqueror, Nathaniel Richards, a descendant from Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, was born in an alternate timeline in the year 3000. When he turned 25, he found his ancestors' stronghold and time machine. What else do you do with a time machine but travel back to ancient Egypt and rule as a god for about a decade or so? After that, he had many more time-hopping adventures where he did some old-fashioned conquering and created many versions of himself during the process. Due to the fact that there are many crazy stories and timelines created by Kang, we decided to focus on one from the wonderful but short-lived cartoon show Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. In this storyline, Kang comes to the 21st century with future technology and weapons that are hard to even perceive by Iron Man and the others. Along with that, he has brought an entire fleet of warships for which he intends to protect the Earth from the inevitable fight between the two alien races, the Kree and the Skrulls. The real impetus for all this was his love Ravonna, who was held in suspended animation after almost dying in the conflict. Kind of a Dr. Freeze twist on his character, which we can appreciate. Oddly enough, Kang doesn't possess any inherent powers of his own, but he does have a genius-level intellect, is an expert at time travel, wears battle armor that can create force fields, project holograms, energy blasts, enhances his own strength, and allows him to manipulate other technology. Also, he is seen to use future weapons like portal guns. The reason Kang would be so interesting as a villain is that he could tease future events and pose a threat to our heroes that would be, initially, completely foreign in nature. Let's just keep our fingers crossed and hope we get to see him make his big screen debut sooner rather than later. We're doubling down on Fantastic Four villains because, oddly enough, they have some really good ones. Kl'rt is a Skrull or shape-shifting alien that has all the powers of Marvel's first family. Super Skrull came about after the Skrull Emperor, Dork 7, decided to take his revenge on the Fantastic Four after they foiled his plans to overtake the Earth. To do this, the Emperor hand-selected Kl'rt to undergo various medical augmentations to grant him the powers of the Thing, Invisible Woman, Mr. Fantastic, and the Human Torch, turning him into a Super Skrull. Not only did he possess all their powers, but he actually exceeded them. He has better invisibility and telekinetic control than the Invisible Woman. He is stronger than the Thing, can stretch beyond what Mr. Fantastic can, and has better control of his pyrokinesis compared to that of the Human Torch. On top of all of that, he still retained his species' ability to shapeshift and utilize hypnosis. His feats include a time when he knocked the Silver Surfer off his surfboard, was able to project a force field that can withstand the blows from Mjolnir, can stretch up to 100 miles in a matter of seconds, and can absorb an infinite amount of heat. Even though there are other Super Skrulls, only Kl'rt comes to mind as the one true embodiment of the group, with Rl'nnd being a close second. I hope I'm saying these right. Seeing Super Skrull go toe-to-toe with any of Marvel's big screen heroes would be a true delight, and would hint at a possible galaxy-spanning conflict with the Kree and the Skrulls. Although Fantastic Four's powers have been fused into the Human Torch before in the movies, this villain would be an excellent antagonist to a team that could desperately use one. So far we've had some oddballs on this list, but this last one might take the cake as far as the strangest one. Or maybe you'd give that to Dormammu. I don't know, it's your call. But imagine, if you will, some of the most powerful mutants from the X-Men franchise. Now combine their consciousness, and that's our last villain. Now, it isn't a combination of Phoenix Force, Jean Grey, and Apocalypse. But that could... Sorry, I'm getting off topic. I'm talking about Professor X and Magneto. Once, after Wolverine slashed Magneto, the old Master of Magnetism decided that he'd strip all the adamantium off of Logan's skeleton. This was the breaking point for Charles, who decided to wipe Magneto's mind completely and render him catatonic. This maneuver would inadvertently cause Professor X to absorb the dark ego that Magneto had always harbored. This, combined with all the pent-up and suppressed tendencies that Professor X had built up over the years towards mutant animosity by humans, gave birth to Onslaught. Besides having just a stupendous name, Onslaught is the culmination of extreme ideals in Magneto and all the ill will Charles had built up over the years, with all their powers mixed in for good measure. Onslaught's first goal was that of Professor X's, a utopian society for human and mutant kind. However, his means would differ ever so slightly from the X-Men leader, in that to accomplish this, Onslaught would attempt to fuse humanity into one giant collective intelligence. It's pretty messed up. After some crazy scuffles and realizing that his dream may not bear fruit, Onslaught decided to destroy all humanity and make a second son, which, granted, is still pretty extreme. It took the Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and believe it or not, Dr. Doom to stop this guy. He's no joke. Also, he has at times possessed other mutants' abilities like the incredibly powerful Franklin Richards and X-Man. Along with the magnetic manipulation and telepathy that one would assume would come from the combination of Magneto and Professor X's consciousnesses, he can also utilize astral projection, can read thought imprints left on inanimate objects, aka psychometry, mind control, mind possession, telekinesis, flight, super strength, nigh indestructible armor if you take a bannerless Hulk out of the equation, which, for this, I will, and reality manipulation, to name a handful. He has accomplished some pretty crazy feats, over which include when he held an enraged Hulk down for a little chat, the time he threw Juggernaut from Vancouver to New Jersey, and separated Bruce Banner from the Hulk. Onslaught is a daunting foe, that much is certain, but this type of enemy would require almost every hero you could get. That's why, in a perfect world, he would be an excellent candidate for the best superhero crossover movie of all time. Think of it a little bit like Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where they really have to build up to him. But in this case, it would be more subtle as we watch an aged Professor Charles Xavier get more weary with the world, Magneto becoming increasingly more violent, and a good representation of the Fantastic Four, which would lead to the birth of Franklin Richards. It would be perfect! Also, I didn't even get into Red Onslaught, but maybe we can talk about that another time. I can always dream to see either of them in the movies one day. Well, that's our list. What do you guys think? Have any crazy villains you'd love to see in the Marvel films? Let us know in the comments below, and like, subscribe, and share if you haven't already. Also, check out our streams on Twitch, and our very own weekly podcast called The Critical Podcast. I know, real original, where we talk about nerdy stuff, just like this. Take care, everybody.